This is Growing Your Firm, the podcast for ambitious accountants and firm owners who want to work smarter, grow faster, and lead better. Hey everybody, welcome to Growing Your Firm podcast. My name's Dave Cristello. I'm the founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow. This podcast is for any firm owner that wants to elevate their marketing, their sales, their team management, workflow, technology, and so much more. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, Dave Cristello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest, it feels like a long time coming because of what he does and who he does it for, but it's Chase Damiano. He uncovers operational inefficiency in accounting firms. He is the founder and CEO of Human at Scale, which is providing proven operating systems to help accounting firms improve margins and grow revenue. I was talking with Chase right before we hit record, and I'm like, this feels like such a perfect fit for like the Jetpack Workflow brand and our audience. I was like, who else is doing this? And we literally couldn't think of it. So maybe we're both wrong here. Email me if I am. But that said, I think we're going to dive into a lot of practicality of how to run a better, a more efficient accounting firm. That said, Chase, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David, for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely.
And,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit. How did you get into this specialty in the first place?
So I started my professional career at Accenture in emerging technology and innovation, and very quickly fell in love with entrepreneurship. So I found a business partner there. We both left our jobs, and we built what became the nation's largest provider of nitro cold brew coffee to offices. So if you've ever been into a co-working space or an office that really cared about employee amenities, it's likely our coffee was in there, especially along the East Coast. And I served as chief operating officer and on the board during that time, and learned a lot. We were vertically integrated. We started multiple business lines and just got inundated with information and learnings around operations. And it was incredibly hard. Even for myself, I was a young leader at the time, learning leadership for the first time, and it was overwhelming to the point where I felt in order to really up-level myself, I had to learn from lots of people before me. Read lots of books, got coaching, up-leveled my leadership, and so much so that I had many pivotal moments throughout that stint that I saw an opportunity to better serve founders and CEOs with respect to operational excellence. I did that for about 5 years in an industry agnostic way. So working with B2B SaaS companies, working with restaurant brands or breweries trying to scale, working in professional services as well, and one of which was accounting firms. I saw so much success in our work in accounting firms that I chose to go all in. And work exclusively in accounting and tax.
And what? Give me an example. What were you seeing that was kind of really invigorating for you? What kind of results was it? Was it profit increase? What did that typically look like? Or what were some of the results? Obviously, you can't guarantee results. This, that, and the other thing. But what's an example? What you saw, and you're like, oh my gosh, we got to stay with accountants.
So when we typically work with firms, we are walking into situations where the firm owner is incredibly burned out. They are stressed. They are in endless meetings. They feel that they are driving change within the firm with limited help. They might be asking themselves questions, hey, did I hire the right people? Like, how am I structuring the organization? They're not getting the feeling and joy of business ownership that they could have, and they hit this plateau. And what we see as results after going through our process and going into our work is that they feel more free. Their relationship with the business is, the old adage of working on the business versus working in the business. They get to work on the business. They get to spend their free time back. Many of them recycle that time into growing the business, working on vision or strategy or business development. Some just want more time to just go out there and sell. Some just want to have what I call a well-oiled machine, this operating engine that works inside the firm, as well as a team that is excited to be there. So that's the typical transformation that we're seeing.
Yeah, very cool. So let's start from the perspective of the burnt out owner, the tired owner, which is probably many right now when we're shooting this because it's right after extension season. in which when we release it, it might be right before busy season. So you might be either just coming off a tired couple weeks, or you're prepping for your yearly sprint slash marathon of going through busy season. So somebody comes to you and they're like, Chase, I don't know. I'm at my wit's end. I'm exhausted. Maybe they come to you and say, I want to get my firm ready to sell, or I want to have a succession plan. I just need it just needs to run better and I'm stuck. How do you start diagnosing what to fix first?
The very first step that we take is what's called an operations audit. This is a 360-degree view of what's going on in the firm. The most important of which is speaking with the leadership team and key individuals that are on the front lines. I can't tell you enough on how knowledgeable teams are inside their own company about what the operating problems are. When we speak to teams, it's usually a feeling of relief. They'll tell us, hey, we've been trying to tell our CEO about this, and finally someone's coming in to do something about it. So we interview everyone on the team. We do a financial analysis to look for things that are blatant gaps in things like, operating expenses percentage of revenue is too high, or client profitability is not enough, or maybe there are some unprofitable clients that hasn't been addressed, or even unprofitable employees or team members that haven't been addressed. We'll also do a deep tech stack review, typically getting into practice management platforms and understanding what is the adoption level of this technology. Are people using it in the way that was designed? Are people actually getting the reporting out of it that they need to make effective tactical decisions and business decisions? Um, and so we take all of this information together and we identify, based on what we're seeing here are what the operational blockers are. We list them in
Yeah.
priority order, because by solving one, sometimes it makes it easier to solve 2, 3, and 4. And we give this
What's
back in a strategic roadmap as a deliverable.
yeah, what's an example of something you solved first that made 2 and 3 easier to solve, or what you put in priority?
Great
What does that
question.
look like?
One of the most common things that we bring in is a business operating system. For anyone's familiar with EOS, or sort of a framework driven way of operating a business, this is going to resonate with you. But it's not a standard playbook. It's highly customized to the firm. So when we walk into these situations, again, the founder or CEO is the one that's been driving the most amount of change within the company. They're the ones with all the knowledge. They're solving the hard problems. And so when we come in, we address that directly and give relief. So think of this as a way of, we are going to standardize all your metrics and KPIs. We're going to support running your team meetings in a facilitated way. We are going to bring awareness to things like sales pipeline, client onboarding, utilization. If you're a bookkeeping firm, it's the weekly bookkeeping or the month end close, to just keep people on track, but also paying attention to it. And then also starting to define each of the processes, both from a client standpoint and also an internal standpoint of how the firm actually works. So by doing this, we stitch it all together. We call this a operating system. And oftentimes by doing that, we're recruiting the team to start caring about these bigger issues that are happening in the company. So for instance, if there's a massive cultural challenge or time zone challenge in between an onshore and offshore team, well, we can start addressing that once we get the rhythm of just like, how do we get more effective at doing the work that we already have? And if we can do that, it will create more capacity and space to work on harder problems. So that's an example.
Okay, so you look at okay, well that's a really thorny issue. How do we build momentum? And if we're building momentum, it starts to build stakeholder buy-in, and then these thornier issues or more complicated ones become easier and easier to solve for.
That's right. And it's also part of the change management piece, and just like you said, getting buy-in. Because for us to be effective at what we do, we're experts in business operations, but we are not experts in accounting. We are not tax professionals. We rely on the team to understand and know their clients and to help document and structure things in collaboration with us, to build a better firm.
Yeah. me ask you a weird question. We'll see where it goes. If you were blindfolded and you were dropped into an accounting firm, let's just say, I don't know, you can pick your typical one that you work with. Maybe they turn 2 million a year, 5 million a year. I don't know. If you had to place a bet on what their problems are, if they're coming to you with operational challenges, what are the common things? You're like, well, you could be nuanced, you could be slightly different, but chances are it's one of these three things. Do you have anything like that surfaces up?
First thing that popped in my head is speed, quality, accuracy. So essentially, are we effectively utilizing the team that we have to get the work out the door in the highest quality way, the fastest way, but without the overwhelm and the burnout, without all the extra hours? Because when I think of team capacity, I think of what is sustainable, not just the sprints. So that would be the first guess, of where to assess. Second
What?
would be something
Oh,
around. Oh yeah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Second would be something around client onboarding, where I typically see a disconnect between the sales process, getting the information from the sales process, and then translating that information to either someone doing cleanup or the long-term account manager or practice manager for this account for this client. And there's a disconnect in the way that is handed off. And sometimes for the smaller firms, it's the CEO that's running that, and they don't always collect all the information that's necessary or live by their own rules in the
Is
process.
that what happens? It's like that's where the ball gets dropped. Is 60% of the information's on file, and then the team has to go and do this chase down admin work while also trying to start the cleanup project that they were sold.
Yeah, it's two things I'm seeing. One is that the handoff is ineffective, meaning that whether there's a checklist or not, by when we're handing off to the cleanup team or the maintenance, the ongoing team, it's not as effective. So they don't have the context on how best to serve or work with this client, and so that could be
Mm.
anywhere from you know um, not gathering all the right information, or things as like, okay, the CEO forgot to change the 2FA authentication on the account, so therefore has to the bottleneck has to continue. um, and then the second is also doing great diligence in the sales and discovery process to make sure you get all the accounts in the first place. So no credit cards are popping up later, or bank accounts are popping up that weren't first discovered. I see that
Yeah,
as an issue as well.
got it. And was there a third one you're going to talk about? Because I have some questions on number one.
Oh, go for it. Go for your questions.
All right. So speed, quality, accuracy. What types of metrics do you recommend firms look at to determine if they have a speed, quality, or accuracy problem? Like, are you looking at turnaround time per service? Obviously, you mentioned things around maybe budgeted time per staff in a given week or month. Like, what sort of signals are you hoping to get from your audit when or they'll get out of their system of record once you go in the firm?
Much of it is in the engagement letter. There is some commitment to, if in a bookkeeping firm is like we dedicate to close the books within a certain amount of time, within the month. Sometimes service tiers are structured just around that. They're closing in 21 days or 4 days or 7 days, and people might pay a premium for that depending on the client's needs. So it's just, okay, benchmarking that. Are we actually meeting it?
Yeah.
And then in speaking with the firm owner, where do you actually want it? Because they always want it faster. So I think that's one, doing the benchmark, with what should be what I call the service level agreement. And
Man,
then
pulling up those service level agreements must be you're like, well, are we meeting all of our service level agreements? And they're like, are you telling me I have to open up every PDF? And then, I mean, they should know whether it's a spreadsheet or a system. We said it's for the 15th. Are we getting it done on the 15th? But, the idea of if you don't know if it's a hard deadline or a soft deadline, and looking up those service level agreements would be not enjoyable.
and it's tough for teams too, because if the team doesn't have anything to anchor on, but the CEO is like, okay, we got to go faster and faster, is like, and to what end? And that,
Yeah.
I think that can also cause like some of the tension that could occur in this. And the other one I was going to mention is um, quality and accuracy. And I think that this one's a little bit more subjective, but the way that we do it is by asking team members how much time they spend in rework or back and forth that they find unnecessary. And sometimes what we're seeing is that this number can get up to 30%. You imagine a world 30% of teams' time is just in unnecessary commenting or back and forth and waiting between team members to deliver. That's a huge amount that can be addressed with a better system or better communication protocol to just add that back as client value, as opposed to just communicating internally as a team.
Yeah, that's nuts. And when you talk about burnout, that's, I feel like, as much of a symptom as working X hours more over a week. I mean, you could be working not that much over your allotted time, 40 hours a week. But if you're doing rework 30% of your time, you're going to be exhausted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're trying to get things done, and then you're working with a colleague, whether they're sitting at the desk next to you or they're on the other side of the world, and you might send comments, and then you'll wait a day, you wait 2 days. Where
Oh my
did someone
gosh.
catch this ball? That, like, what's happening with this? Is like there, sometimes not an acknowledgement, and I don't think that is, it's not a personal thing. It's not about the humans. I think it's about the lack of agreement that we as a company and a culture have about how we work together and collectively. And we enter this contract together when we join the company on this is how the firm works. And that's a huge part of our work at Human at Scale, is just like, okay, it's sitting down with the team, is like, how do we want this to work collectively? As opposed to like, hey, here's the right way to do it. This is our way to do it.
When you talk about the rework, I'll just ask the question that popped in my head, and I think it's overly simplistic, but when people that are doing 30% rework, does it come down to they start it before, there's this concept we hear a lot, you only start when you're ready, right? So is it that they're starting before all the client materials are in on whatever that engagement is? So they have to, like, once the client resubmits stuff or submits the remaining whatever it may be, they realize something needs to change? Or is it things are not documented? So it's kind of flying off of yeah, we have our practice management tool and then we have the secret spreadsheet and then I have my post-it notes. Is it like a process isn't documented, or is it like we just keep starting before things are actually ready to begin to work on?
I've definitely seen both.
Yeah.
Clients may or may not have their things in on time. We're trying to get ahead because there's capacity now versus capacity in the future. So there's definitely some of that. But I also see the processes as well, where okay, here comes a new client. They've been through onboarding, and maybe the documentation of how we best serve this client isn't there, or maybe there's a breakdown in communication, and someone just gets thrown into it. Hey, go figure this out. And in
Yeah.
many cases, if they do, amazing. But sometimes not every team member can do that. People want a little bit more clarity on what to do, because that's how they are the most effective. And because of that lack of clarity, there's a lot of questions and back and forth. Sometimes those questions go to someone else senior on the team. Can you help me with this? But then that starts taking away their time versus the work that they are trying to also do. And if that person's not available, well, guess who gets asked? It's the CEO, because the
Yep.
CEO always knows it all. They always have an opinion, or a way of facing that challenge. And the issue that we see is, well, what happens when that one person asks multiple questions in a day or a week and then magnify that across everyone in the company? Now you're living in a world where the CEO is just getting inundated with Teams messages or Slack messages or emails or escalations that's causing their attention to go down and in within the business.
Yeah.
Now they're reviewing quality. Now they're giving feedback. Now they're approving work. When they know in their gut that it doesn't have to be that way, but they just don't know how to get the team to work more autonomously on things. And so it's this intersection between the technology, the people, the processes, the clients, all coming together in a singular system that allows the CEO to pop out so that they can focus on growing the business.
Do you get a lot of change resistant? If you're a person that's used to pinging the owner and you get your answer. And as an owner, you know you should be having a better process, but oh my gosh, you're so busy. So I'm just going to answer them just this quote unquote one time. And that, so the process becomes you always ask the owner, you don't look at the checklist. Two, you are now reinforcing the system. So if somebody comes to the owner with a question, you say, well, did you look in insert tool first? Did you look in Jetpack? And they're like, it feels like you're almost micromanaging or being very tedious or almost coy about it. But it's almost necessary because you got to reinforce the process back into the tool and not the person. So, what have you learned in helping people change their mindset? Because it's going to be short term inconvenient to make that transition from pinging the owner or pinging my colleague Bob to checking the tool. And if the tool doesn't have it, we need to update the tool, or we need to update the process, or we need to update how to find certain things. So it's inconvenient in the short term. So, how do you help people deal with that shift?
This is a really great question, David. And let's address this from the perspective of the employee and then the perspective of the CEO. So from the perspective of the employee, when a challenge surfaces, for all of us living in some sort of pain, I'm experiencing pain with this challenge. But human nature, our default is to take the path of least resistance to solve the challenge. And oftentimes, at least up until now, it is I'm going to open up the messaging platform, I'm going to ping the CEO, and then I'm going to get the challenge. I'm going to get the challenge resolved. In fact, not only is it going to be resolved, it's probably going to be really, really fast, and it's going to be
Yeah.
right, and it's already pre-approved. So I don't
Yeah.
even have to second guess. So this habit forms where I have problem, go to the CEO, get a solution, come back. So the CEO
Yeah.
turns into this like chief Wikipedia officer, where it's just like, okay, they become Google in a way. I was like, okay, this feedback loop. However, when speaking with teams about this behavior, they don't want to do it. They don't want to, because every team member that I've spoken with is like they love working with the CEO, and so they know how hard the CEO works, and they know how busy that they are. So sometimes it's like, okay, I don't want to be a bother, but I have to because
Hmm.
this is the only way to do it, and I'm also working on a deadline. So teams love this shift to a playbook or an operating system driven approach because not only can they feel more autonomous in getting the work done, the CEO is now out of the way, but it also gives that gift of relief to the CEO. So that's the employee's perspective. Let's talk about the CEO's perspective. The CEO is living in this inundation of messages, again, approvals, feedback. Clients might be messaging them, oh, can you take care of this? And they have learned a behavior that up until now, when they metaphorically put the company on their back in this way, things tend to work out. In fact, in order to get to the level that they're at, they've had to execute hard. They've had to know what to do. They have to have some sort of answer. And that reinforces a cycle the other way around. This cycle of like, okay, whenever I receive a question, I create an answer and then give it back to them. And sometimes that comes with a belief that's like, oh, well, I don't want to leave the team blocked. I want to make sure everyone has what they need because I really need to keep them productive. But again, it creates this psychological attention around down and in the organization that really inhibits doing hard and creative work like growing the business. So for CEOs, just to your point, David, it is about changing the behavioral pattern and teaching CEOs that when questions come in, especially we have to all have agreed to do it this way. You can't just start doing it, but when questions come in, CEOs can do two things. They can either do what you said, which is reference, hey, we've talked about this before, go look at, have you tried doing this? And number two would be to delay. Some things are not documented, some things you really need to talk about. But the biggest leverage point I see CEOs can do is say, instead of answering the question, say, hey, no problem, happy to answer that. Let's book a call at 4 p.m. today, and I'll deep dive. I'll give you my time to talk in. 9 times out of 10, the team member is going to solve it themselves. Why? Is because the CEO has now removed themselves as a path to least resistance to solving
Yes.
team challenges. And it's a simple behavior modification. You want to give the team time for hard challenges, and it's going to be way faster if you're synchronous and collaborating together. Come meet me later today. And it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter what time of day it is, but just, can we do this later? Again, 9 times out of 10, teams solve it themselves.
And what I like about doing it live too is ideally if something is not documented, it's documented after that call. Hey, before we
Bingo.
wrap up, let's write it down. Where does it live? Who is a reference? And then you write it down and you share it with everybody. Hey, everybody, I just got off the call with Susan. She had this question about how to do X, Y, and Z in the month close. We opened up Jetpack. We didn't see anything there. We updated it. Here's the link to the template. Let me know if you have any questions.
That's
Whatever.
it.
Or do it. If you do daily stand-ups, mention it there, right? Mention that update, either or.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's a great habit to continue to use this information to now build a permanent asset. So CEOs shouldn't be solving the same problems over and over again. Solve them one time.
Yes, absolutely. Chase, I feel like I can ask you probably a dozen more workflow and process related questions because that's where my brain lives in most of the day. One of the final questions I have for you, you mentioned as a young leader, you had to kind of self learn a lot about operational efficiency. Were there any people or books or podcasts or anything else that had a big impact on you? And if so, what were they?
Oh my gosh, so much. Uh, for for leadership, I liked Elad Gil's High Growth Handbook, The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker, High Output Management by Andy Grove, former CEO of Intel, and Bill Campbell also had a book, I think, called The $1 Trillion Coach. I believe something
Yeah.
like that. And there's a myriad more, but the idea being, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown as well. There's a myriad more, but the idea is, from a leadership standpoint, the more clearer that we can communicate and the more that we can invest in our people, it will lead to our success. And then from an operations standpoint, I liked The Goal, and I cannot quite remember. I think Eli Goldratt. Oh,
Yeah,
Eli,
I
is that
almost
where you're looking?
I'm looking for it because I'm like, if there's one, I might have put it next to my nightstand because I was probably planning on rereading it. Um, this is the Bill Campbell one,
That's
which
it.
ironically I have not read it. But the interesting thing about Bill Campbell, and the book's called the $1 Trillion Coach, and Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, was one of the co-authors of it because Bill Campbell was a coach to a number of notable executives, including Eric Schmidt, but he was also Jack Dorsey. I think for a while, Jeff Bezos. He was also the CEO of
Mhm.
Intuit. So really interesting guy. Born in Pittsburgh, which is where I'm based, which is kind of cool. But the goal,
Oh, nice.
uh,
Go Pittsburgh.
absolutely can't recommend. Oh, you know what? Here it is. I got it right here. Because I knew I wanted to go back and reread it. This is one of those books has the world's worst cover. I don't know if we can agree on that. If you're watching a video, you could see it here. I've
That's it.
recommended it to so many people, and they look at it and they go, "Really? It
He's
looks
holding
like
up
it."
The Goal by Eli Goldratt, right?
Yes, yeah, you're right. And it looks like a very old school, uh, almost academic textbook, but it's a story. It's a story of his theory of constraints, and
Mhm.
it's actually really engaging. It's not, and he doesn't drop the story halfway through. It goes through the whole book. So yeah, I was hoping you would say that one because when I think processes, this is the one that I feel like I need to go back to more often and just keep ingraining it into my brain.
Yeah. Hey, cut from the same cloth, David. I love seeing it.
Yeah, sounds good. If somebody wants to reach out, say thanks for coming on the show, learn more about your work, connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Sure. So you can find us at humanatscale.com, and we have a free operations assessment to help firms elevate their operations. For those that take it, we'll also send an operations improvement guide for accounting firms that can help in just a freebie to just help start thinking operationally within your firm, and the goal being to get out of the weeds and get back to growth.
I love it. If you enjoyed today's interview, leave a review. It helps us get the word out. If you really enjoyed it, you want a full breakdown of what we talked about, go to jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We'll do a full write-up. And if Chase said something that really ignited a new insight, new passion for you, share it. Share it on social, share it in private. Doesn't matter. Just share it. Help us get the word out. Chase, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, David, for having me.